Hello and welcome to Health Innovators. I'm your host, Jonah Comstock, Editor-in-Chief at PharmaFarm. My guest today is Dr. Houda Hachad, PharmD and Vice President, Clinical Operations at AccessDx Laboratory. And we're going to be talking a little bit about precision medicine. Welcome to the show, Dr. Hachad.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So to begin with, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, especially around this topic of precision medicine.
Absolutely. So I'm a PharmD by training. And as you can see from my accent, I actually graduated from a university in France. After completion of my doctorate in pharmacy, I was interested in pursuing a career in research. So I actually went and got a master's degree and even started on a PhD program around clinical pharmacology. And I was very interested in not only understanding the medications that were on the market and how the role of a pharmacist, but more importantly, what are the discoveries and what are the new topics and the tools that we have to actually develop new medications. And after all these years in France, I actually came to the United States in 2000, and I joined a group here in Seattle, University of Washington. Uh, and I had the opportunity to be part of something that was very new that I didn't learn about in school, which is really becoming this specialist around drug information and packaging the information into these digital repositories, these databases, for to facilitate uptake by researchers. So I worked on a database on drug-drug interactions that was actually used by large pharma. So, and that allowed me to build tools, but still have that research, that opportunities to actually publish, interact, and really understand what was coming and helping, groups that are within drug metabolism and clinical pharmacology with pharmaceutical companies to actually acquire literature information faster and in a more efficient way. So I spent quite some years there. I loved my the ability to be part of these databases and creating them from scratch. And we went on developing another database, this time around pharmacogenomics. And that's how this sort of transition, a natural transition from drug-drug interaction, which is really safety, morphed into also expanding it to a different set of variability, that can affect drug responses, which is the genetics, our genetic makeup. And then I left university and co-founded a company around precision medicine, which led me to my role here at AccessDx. We were partners for many years and expanding the use of one application of precision medicine, which is pharmacogenomic testing. So this is a little bit of background about myself. I'm also a mom. I have two kids, and I'm a very busy, and I'm trying to push them really to becoming more interested in the life sciences. So we'll see if I succeed or not.
Great. So draw me a little bit more connection between these kind of steps along your process. Well, what do you think about when you talk about precision medicine, and how does that fit in with pharmacogenetics?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I said, when you're trained as a pharmacist, you acquire all this knowledge about what are the medications that work for certain diseases, etc. But there is heavy emphasis on really first do no harm. And by that, for a pharmacist, it means whatever knowledge you can gain about that patient and their experience with that medication is key in order for us to really avoid these adverse events or these toxicity events, which increase pain and suffering, and honestly, we don't achieve positive outcome. So one of the those major sources of really adverse and factors contributing to adverse drug events are co-medications, so prescribing multiple medications and certain medications that don't go really well with each other. But it was recognized for many years that genetic makeup and individual, specific individual traits can really define how we can respond badly to a medication. So that was always very interesting for me and fascinating for me, simply because I'm interested in genetics. I'm fascinated by the role of, these differences, yet commonalities, and that define, how we interact with the biological, world. So that's the sort of a normal transition. So knowing a lot about medication, being a pharmacist and having this deep interest in genetics. And then in the years, if early 2000, we started seeing these technologies, the sequencing technologies and tools, these instruments, large vendors putting on the market and making it affordable to not only researchers, but also clinical institutions in employing some of these tools and revealing the genetic signatures of individuals. So because of that, of sort of that shift, it allowed us to now sort of start democratizing this and not keeping it really in the hands of researchers or large pharmaceutical companies, which it has been used to some extent before 2000, but really bringing it closer to the point of care, bringing it to large academic centers that have a clinical, point of care and clinical services, but also research services. So that's sort of this natural transition. What I call it was a natural transition for me, having worked with pharma on this drug-drug interaction domain and improving safety. It was a natural phenomena for me to really pursue precision medicine through this pharmacogenomics, which is the use of genetics for medications.
So how far can we take this with the technology we have now, and or even thinking about what we could have in the future? How specifically can you target a drug, or what are kind of the big advantages that this brings from the traditional way that we've done prescribing in different kinds of conditions?
Absolutely. So what we can tell you right now is there are some specialties, and you probably know about that. There are certain specialties or group of diseases where not only we were able to demonstrate that the use of a genetic makeup of an individual allow us to actually achieve better outcomes, but also can inform future medications. And that specialty is by far oncology and cancer treatment. As you know, for many years, the traditional treatments for many types of cancers, not all of them, but many, included very toxic chemotherapy regimens, usually medications that have been developed many years ago, extremely toxic. And these were not targeted. So basically, they would kill the cancer cell, but we know that they would not be pinpointing really where the tumor, where the cancers are located. And they would also kill non-cancer cells, and hence this heavy toxicity. Over the years, as we understood better about the molecular pathways on how these cancers develop, we were able to put on the market, pharma, what we call targeted therapies, which are medications this time that will work for a specific signatures that these cancer cells carry. And that allowed us to now having an opportunity to actually guide that treatment and force the medication to go and really focus on killing what we wanted to kill. So cancer by far, and it's still ongoing, not only we were able to put these medications and have more of these targeted therapies on the market, which, as you know, for certain type of diseases were completely life-changing. We used to have, the remission times were very reduced for some cancers. Now, with some type of cancers, people would live multiple decades with them after having these treatments. So that changed completely our understanding of the disease and our understanding on how to best treat it. And what is interesting for cancer, for certain type of cancers, is the nature of disease make it possible to also study the genetic changes, not only at the level of the individual, but at the level of the cancer type. So that opened additional doors for us in really doing these subtypes and subclassifications. And some researchers and oncologists will tell you that even the way we used to classify cancers 20 years ago has changed. The way we classify cancer now is based on these genetic signatures. So not only the fundamental knowledge about the disease has changed, but our ability to treat it has changed. And of course, we have positive outcomes. Now, cancer is very unique because it's really the best application for precision medicine. As we understood about cancer, of course, there was interest in looking at other diseases, more specifically chronic diseases, such as, cardiovascular diseases, behavioral health diseases, etc., depression, and really doing the same thing. Can we, by studying genetic markers of people with certain diseases, can we subtype further these diseases in order for them to understand a little bit better on what caused the disease and therefore target better the medication? And I would say that for, let's say, if we take cardiovascular for an example, to some extent we were able to understand better the diseases, but uh, the amount of medications that were able to be developed did not reach the same level as in oncology. We were able to put certain medications on the market that target specific genetic disorders, but I would say that the promise is still have not been achieved yet for cardiovascular. We still have, I would say, a small number of medication that we can use that are available in the toolbox of that cardiologist or that primary care. And the same thing for behavioral health, for depression and other psychiatric disorders. We sort of understood the architecture of these diseases and how maybe the genetic interacts with the environment to cause some of these events. But this did not yet translated to novel medications that can alleviate some of these diseases. So we still are in this phase of trying to understand. It's probably because some of these chronic diseases are too complex and they're multifactorial, and the genetic is just one contributing factor.
So how do you get the genetic information that you need to figure out if this is a use case for the medication? Are obviously in larger hospitals that you can order that like you order any other test, I would think.
Mhm.
But I know there's all these other avenues towards gene testing. Now there's consumer oriented gene testing. So, as we think about these conditions that might not be treated in a hospital, like behavioral health, like chronic conditions, how
Correct.
do you make a workflow and a patient experience model that works towards this kind of genetically driven precision medicine?
So for it to apply and really being put in the hand of in the clinical services, you need multiple component, right? You need, first of all, you need to decide, and you need to choose, rather not decide, you need to choose from the evidence that have been assembled by all these researchers and these expert groups and professional societies. You need to decide on, I would say, the best applications. What are the best associations between this genetic trait and this medication response? Once you know that, those are the most likely, sort of pairs or implementation program that you need to focus on. So first you need to select, I'm going to focus on this disorder with these medications. We tend to also focus on things that are commonly prescribed, that are going to touch a lot of individuals, not a single medication, a medication that's rarely prescribed. Once you do that, then you need to build the means to identify the patients that are most likely to benefit from the test. We have not reached that level where we can order this test preemptively for everybody and keep it as a baseline in their medical record. I think that's what we're heading. That's the future. We're all hoping that the same thing when you go to the doctor and they measure your weight, they measure your height, they measure all sorts of demographic things, we can order a test to sort of screen you and know who you are, establish that baseline from a sort of a genetic or a pharmacogenetic perspective. Until then, we have tools to identify these patients. And these can be combinations of multiple things, past treatments, type of diseases, type of disorders, etc. Once you identify that patient, then you have to work with an entity that has the means to not only run the test, but have the ability to give you an actionable result that is going to be understood by the doctor first understood, because these are complex results. They need to understand it, you need to educate. And then this entity needs to have digital capabilities. It has to have a technology ability to deliver that information where it means the most and where it will be used, which is the electronic medical records. So you need to have a digital power, a digital health technologies that take that result from whatever that sophisticated machine, that instruments, that's sequencing, that's looking at your genetic trait, and then taking it and bringing it to that environment. And we know doctors are spending their days on, right? Our doctors, our physicians, when we go see them, they will tell you, quote unquote, we live in the EMR. We are all constantly looking at the electronic health record of that patient. So that's what you need. Those are the ingredients. Of course, one needs to keep in mind is the patient is also important in this. You need to obtain consent, you need to explain, you need to educate, you need to tell that patient that we used to do things in a certain way. Now we have certain tools, we can learn something very unique about you. And because we're going to learn something unique about you, it's going to help us limit the risk of having some toxicities. It's going to limit the risk of us giving you a medication that's going to cause you harm, or for which you're not going to actually derive benefit. So you need to educate, you need to engage the patient and communities through a digital engagement. You can also have sessions, informative sessions. To I am a big advocate of still keeping the genetic information within a clinical setting, which means I'm a strong believer that any information about your health, through whether it's through genetics or any measurable variable about you, needs to involve a healthcare provider. So you asked about consumer testing. All these tests that we are seeing now, which I qualify as recreational, it triggers the curiosity of an individual to learn more about their genetics. Maybe its purpose for us is really to democratize this education, to really tell people there is this thing that's genetics that we can know about you. However, using consumer or direct to consumer testing to deliver health information, I think it is not something that I would advocate personally for, simply because I know the complexity of what a result means and the consequence of that result. And I really want that information to be discussed between an individual and their care team, and not that individual receiving that information in their homes, in front of their computer, and then thinking that they can take action on that information. You can imagine how that can be misused if it's information about your medications.
So as we get to the end of our time, I'll ask just a final question, sort of as a wrap up. Where do you think this technology is going long term? Where do you hope to see it go? And what are some of the barriers that we're still working on overcoming?
So there are multiple barriers, and I touched upon some of them, which is the need for us to educate the entire community, the communities of patients, the communities of regulators, the communities of payers, the communities of healthcare providers on what is this new technology? What is its benefit? What is its pitfalls? So people sort of all intuitively believe that, yes, genetic has an important role in every aspect of my biology and how I respond, how I eat, how I respond to certain food, how I respond to medications. But people sometimes don't understand the difficulty and the how it has to be done really well, which is an opportunity for us. And how I see this evolving is really heavy, or maybe expanding our use of digital health and considering digital health as really to improve operations on how to deliver PGX, pharmacogenomics results, for example, but also when we design our clinical trials, when we recruit these patients to learn more, we can use digital health. For example, we can think about tools to automatically gather from the electronic medical record informations that allow us to screen these patients much, much faster and recruit them much faster if they have failed certain therapies. We can develop tools, for example, where we can have apps that collect specific information, not necessarily genetic information, but other variable, other measurable variables for an individual into these wearable devices or so, that can complement and shed some light on how genetic interacts with the environment. I mean, you're familiar. You can collect a lot of number or endpoints of your vital signs, for example, when you go running, etc. These could be extremely informative if you couple them with genetic information. And finally, you can also have sort of a lot of interactive websites or tools while at the office, while at the physician office, that are engaging you, that are asking you questions and maybe telling you something about your health that you were not aware of, or telling you something about a test that's available to you that maybe you have never heard about. So this is sort of where I think that digital health, coupled with the instrumentation and our ability to read our genome in a couple of hours now, is actually opening doors for us to expand the use of precision medicine and achieve wellness, and not just be in this disease curing mindset, but really preventing and increasing well-being.
That's amazing. Really, really changing what we mean when we say precision medicine in a way to be, that
Correct. Yeah.
preventative, holistic,
Yeah.
personalized thing.
Yeah. And precision medicine, of course, within the field of genomics, we think about precision, always the use of genomics, but it's actually the use of genomics coupled with so many other variables about that individuals. If you can have your hands on them and make sense of them and understand how they interact with genetics, that's where you take health and wellness to the next level. And if you can do that in a longitudinal manner, not at a single point, not I go to the doctor, I get this test now, and they act on the information. Imagine that the genomic information is something that now lives in your record, and it can at every point inform you over your lifetime about multiple aspects. When you're a child, it's going to tell a story that's going to probably be different when you're an elderly person, because the interaction with the environment and how your organs are changed, and how this genetic components comes to play is key now. But it's in the hands of your doctor, or it's in your own hands, and you have that knowledge.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hachad. This has been a great primer and a great conversation. And I really appreciate you coming on today to share your knowledge and your insight with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and talk soon.